Hi. Here I am. I didn't mean to skip on that. So freedom from conformity. Welcome. I'm truly delighted to be here today in front of you speaking about freedom from conformity. And I suppose my thoughts today are with the family of Nelson Mandela, who was a true nonconformist. He lived his life 27 years in jail, holding on to his true beliefs. He had a moral compass that wasn't conforming with the society of the time. And while we look at conformity, this is a normal distribution curve for those non-mathematicians in the audience. And it's a perfect normal curve, where it's got 80% in the centre and 10% either side. Now, most people think, I have a friend actually that says there is no such thing as normal. The only thing normal is a cycle on the washing machine. And I suppose what I'm looking at tonight is not just, where do I fit on this curve? It really depends on where you stand as to where the curve is, but also looking at how the curve shifts depending on your culture, your creed, and your religion or your race. And I'm going to bring us back. June had us in the 90s. I'm going to bring us back 10 years more to 1983. And Anne Lovett died cold and alone in a graveyard in Longford because she gave birth to a child when she wasn't married, and she couldn't tell her parents, and she couldn't tell her friends. She was alone. In those days, the Magdalen Laundries were doing a good business in adoption. And the Magdalen Laundries shut in 1997. I'm from this wee island. This is the view out my kitchen window on a good day. And you can the mainland is up here, but you can't see it because of the wind and the rain and the sea on the rocks. And it's up here in Donegal, which is a kind of standalone country, a county on the edge of Ireland, on the edge of Europe, on the edge of the world. And we don't conform either. And my family and friends supported me in 1985 when I became pregnant. And I got on with my life. And I have a beautiful daughter today. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about the island. There are 480 people on the island at the minute. I moved back there in July, so I'm technically still a Cork woman. I still have a house in Glanmire. And the band had 34 members. The youngest is 10. The eldest is in his 70s. He's been in the band since he was a wee gasser. And they played the Aviva Stadium there last March for our president and the Ireland-Austria match. And 115 people came to watch them. And that's all what community is about. And the support I had in the 80s is still there today. But the population is dropping. We have lost 1,000 people in the last 100 years. These are the census statistics, and they say statistics never lie. And we started around the 1500 in 1911, and my parents were born both on the island in the 40s during the war, and they left in the 50s. And they left, and a lot of other people left with them, because you can see there was a sharp decline. And those of you who can remember back to the 50s, 50% of Ireland's GDP came from people like my parents. They sent their money home, and it supported the ones that were left. They returned in the 70s with 4 children. I was one of them. And we all left sporadically in the 80s. Now, I forgot to mention about the Arranmore pipe band. It's a bagpipe band. There's a strong Scottish connection. And most people in the early years, and even up until the 80s, everyone went to Scotland and worked as tatty hokers, which are potato gatherers in the farms in Scotland. And they'd go round and round different farms working manually. But in the 80s, a strange thing happened. And before I talk about that, we'll look at Israel. And Israel has its own problems, but it's very high on education. And it produces 4 PhDs per 10,000 people. Japan and the US produce 3. Europe and the rest of the world produce 2. Europe are kind of working on this, and they've got the Bologna process going through. But my little island up in northwest Donegal produced 3 PhDs in the 1990s. 3 of them. 2 of them were women. I was one of them. And that's why I see that there could be sustainable jobs on the island. I mean, you know, my island is declining. So is rural Ireland. Everyone's moving to the city, or they're driving from the likes of Mullingar and Dundalk and driving into Dublin in the morning, and they're driving back home in the evening. That's not sustainable. I think we need to look for sustainable jobs in rural Ireland, and I suppose, you know, this is part of my passion. So this is my view from my kitchen window. And down below, down along here, there's wild geese at the minute. They've flown down from the Arctic, and they fly in this formation for a very good reason. They save 71% of their energy by flying like this. And basically the lead goose takes the hit, the aerodynamic hit, and the geese behind basically float in its slipstream. And when the goose gets tired, it goes round to the back and someone else takes over. They can fly further, faster, smarter when they work together. And that got me thinking, why can't we do this? So basically I got involved and thought a bit, and I kind of thought, well, we can actually do something and work, rest and play. And this is my image here. I worked in 2010 with the artist Anna Nielsen. This is me with yellow hair. And I basically took my scientific background. I was working as an analytical chemist, and I went to a conference on climate change in 2008, up at the airport in the International Hotel. It blew my mind. I kind of thought, why is nobody doing anything about this? And then I kind of thought, well, what are you doing? So here is kind of my image of what we could do. And basically, I'm taking a page out of the Geese's book and saying, yep, this is some way we could work together. So I was living in Glanmire. I was living in a housing estate, a Celtic Tiger estate, not long built. It's about 10, 12 years old now. And the idea basically I was thinking was, you know, everyone's moving from the rural countryside into the city. Most people in cities live in suburbia. Most people in suburbia live in housing estates. Let's kind of work on the housing estates as a manageable piece. My housing estate has 130 houses in it. And that's pretty much what that is. The book is coming out at some point in the future that I'm not quite sure when. So going back then to the island, and we got involved in an energy project that was leader funded with Clare Island in Mayo and Bear in Cork and 3 islands in Denmark. And we basically worked together and looked at best practice on energy usage, because as you know, cities use a lot of energy, but so do islands. Islands have to ferry everything in and out. It's all diesel. There's lots of it. So we worked on an energy plan. And the idea really was about fuel security, food security, and just bringing in the salmon. There's major issues about salmon fishing at home, but we won't go there. And the idea with the food and the fuel security is about creating jobs on the island. High quality food, processed food, and we can actually create jobs that would keep people on the island. So we created the energy plan in April 2012. And Seamus Boner put this lovely proverb in that I'm going to read out now. Na trí carja is far, agus na trí námaja is massa, chinny, gi, agus ishka. So the three best friends and the three worst enemies, fire, wind and water. And that's, I suppose, conformity really. It's all about a balancing act. So we've got fire, we've got wind, and we've got water. But bear in mind, this is the level we're talking about. And just I'm on the south side of the island, and the wind is southwesterly. Our average speed is 9 meters per second, which is fairly fast. 6 is commercially viable. So the idea is that we're going to spread like wildfire the message. And the idea from the island is, this is the transition towns message really, that we think with our heads, we feel with our hearts, and we use our hands. So the island's taken position as the lead goose, not forever, just for a while. It wants to provide meaningful experiences using our head, heart and hands. And there's another islander, Alistair MacLeod, who's from the island of Egg, and he talks about soil, he talks about soul, and he talks about society. I have a strong sense of place, as do other islanders. We're deeply rooted in where we're from. We're scattered all over the globe, but we're always delighted to go home. It's that arrested development that we had. I left home at 12, went to boarding school. There was no school at the time. Interestingly, there's 68 in the secondary school now. About a fifth come in from the mainland because the education is so good there. We want to inspire, and we want to integrate our ideas with others. We want to innovate, and we want to provide a sense of shared values. We want to work together, and we are. We want to use technology, but we don't have rural broadband. We've got this kind of pretend thing that kind of half works some of the time. And the government is after sending back 17 million because it said it didn't need rural broadband. Donegal County Council have mapped the whole county, bar the islands. They're saying, they don't need it here, and they're not here. At the chamber meeting in Letterkenny there recently, but there was. The manager of Voodoo is actually from the island, and he stood up and he's like, no, we need it, we need it. We want to share information, and we're using internet radio station Irish Radio International that's here based in Cork on Rochestown Road. We're networking. Here I am. My Twitter account is Shirley at Cispro. And the strapline, the hashtag I use for the island project is Cycle Isle. I've got Sustainable Islands groups on LinkedIn and Facebook. And we're also involved in an international project with European islands. So we've got Malta and Sicily and Samso and ourselves. And we're working together on kind of building this pact of islands, which is similar to the Covenant of Mayors, which was a promise that the mayors of the big cities of the world decided that they would actually get on better than the United Nations, and they'd move things a bit forward faster. So they've created this Covenant of Mayors, and the Pact of Islands is following, and we're working towards that. We have knowledge, but we're gathering more. We want to learn, and we want to share our learning. And on training, and just showing you this image, this is in the 70s. This is a Morris Minor on a 30-foot half-decker. That's the way we used to bring in our boats, but we've moved on, or bring in our cars. So my question for you this evening is, are you willing to join the flock? Thank you very much. Agus go to Margaret.